Hello there, Hannah.
Hey,
Good to see you.
good. It's good to see you.
Absolutely. How are you today?
Good. We haven't touched base in a while. I know.
It's been
I mean,
forever.
physically we've met, but I think it's been a while since we've talked. So it's good to actually talk to you again,
I
like
know.
camera face to face.
You've been busy with work and living your life. Same
Mm,
with me. Um, but Hannah, we've talked about doing this for a while, and
yeah,
I'm very excited to bring you on board here. As you
yeah.
know,
Excuse
coach,
me.
bless you.
Thank
Um,
you.
this is the Coach Conversation series, and I have these conversations with coaches about the types of lessons that they're delivering, and they'll deep dive into their actions, their strategies, and um, it's a learning experience for the coaches that are watching, as well as the clients. They get to see the types of coaches that we have, the diversity, and
Yeah,
also they can pull maybe inspiration or even some unique lessons that tidbits that you're doing with your clients, and
right.
they'll recommend it to their coaches, and it's a very good learning experience.
Yeah,
I wanted to bring you on board for a while because I remember our discussions in the past, and we would talk about what kind of work that you're doing with your clients, and it was very, very technical.
right.
And I want to bring that to our coaches that are watching. Really,
Yeah.
I know they'll get a lot of good ideas, and um, so yeah. Why don't we do this? Can we have you just introduce yourself, and then we'll take it from there?
Yeah, yeah. Well, basically living here for nearly 2 years now. But for the people who's watching, I pretty much have grown up in Australia. Um, but in terms of my projects, it's always been global-based projects for IT hardware-based companies. So um, for the most part, I've kind of dealt with one Korean client, but when I was in Australia and Singapore, I would work with European and North American and APAC region minus Japan and Korea
Mm.
type focused clients. Um, and had an opportunity to come to Korea 2 years ago, not because of work initially, but then work opportunities arose. And I've been here for 2 years now. So in saying that, I think just kind of getting straight into kind of the topics that I choose with my coach, like my students. Um, I initially go pretty much very hard. I say that hard in the sense where I choose not the easiest articles because you need to kind of establish a kind of like a benchmark point to get them to self-motivate
Mhm.
themselves to understand the type of content that I'm expecting.
Mhm.
Because obviously you give us a brief in terms of where they work and what they do. They're not the juniorest of people. Most people, like, they might be managers, they might be senior managers, but I say that they're not the junior level type English level people. We're talking about people who have a capacity where they deliver business English, but they need to push themselves a little bit more and have that confidence and just kind of drive their own conversations, whether it be colloquial, just, touch base, or be able to hold, I guess, very demanding type discussions with their counterparts
Mhm.
internally or externally. I start with, like you said, Harvard Business Review articles are great, but um, I do mix it up from time to time. I do choose like articles like that are non-white paper based,
Mm.
non-managerial, because students get into this habit where they just, when you talk to them, um, like they just memorize the script that I edited, and I hate that. Like if you're not going to memorize the words and not use it, don't memorize the script. You're going to forget it in a week when I don't talk to you. So I always, like, there were students in the past who do that because they just want to do well, right? They don't want to be, graded for not being able to deliver like the relevant wording or the script or the sentence that I would intuitively make. So I would say, like, memorize the words if you don't know it, and maybe make sure you use 2 or 3 words in the next revision session, but don't go memorizing the script because you don't know what you're saying.
Mm.
So in that instance, I would kind of re-ask the question again. Like if I have to re-ask the question 3 times to hear their own opinion, I would do that. And sometimes that would be, that's a stressful session, even for myself. I hate doing it, but you need to do it because you have to go, I'm not here to, be like the typical stereotype Korean teacher. 틀렸어요. Like, no, I don't do that. It's about kind of delivering content where both of us learn. Like, you need to be able to bring your business insight and foresight that you see in the article with your experience to me. So once you get to that level, which is very hard, sometimes it is hard as a coach to do that, because you have to initially, like with my students when I first started, I would like literally, and this is a little bit over the top, but I think it worked for me because it was easier later on. I would assess like at least 2 hours after this, like the first script session, to see, like, listen to what they had said in the script. And sometimes it's like horrendous because they're just like spitting out any like business terminology. 다 뱉는 거. Like, 이 말을 아니까 I'm just going to say it. So I would like re-sentence the whole paragraph. And I remember you saying, hey, do you need to do that? Like, you wiped out the whole sentencing. I did that because it was so wrong. It was so wrong. And the easy way out would be, yeah, that opinion's great. But when you get to the revision session, it's hard on the coach because it's mediocre content and you're driving a conversation that they don't care about. So to build that rapport, you need to kind of really push students sometimes and say, look, it's not going to be comfortable for you, but maybe in 6 months' time, it will be. And I've actually had that with a few of my students where I've seen them grow. It has been not the easiest road to see that growth, because it's always hard, because I work too. I work full time. I do overtime sometimes. I know they work. It's not easy on both of us, but I always say, look, it got to a point once where one of my students, she works quite a lot. She's one of my current students now. And I know her level of work. And I know what she does because she's given me a whole kind of touch base of what she does. And when I start off my sessions, I don't go straight into the article. I refuse to do that because then it becomes touch and go. You don't know what's going on. I always start off with a touch base question, irrelevant to the article. How's your week been? Or like, what do you think of Trump? Or what do you think of the Korean president? I just like off topic. And we start our conversation because I kind of test out their conversational ability. Sometimes they might have the best business lingo, but when it comes to kind of, they can't do it. They get really stressed out, and they like, literally what happens is, like, students, we're on camera, right? And obviously I don't like looking at myself. I'm usually typing away. So I'm just like waiting, and they're like, 잠깐만요. And I'm like, okay, good. Okay, I'll let you think. And they're like, 1분 동안 카메라. And I'm like, what do I do? Like, and then I'm like, I'm kind of getting nervous because I'm doing nothing for 2 minutes, right? Because they get really stressed out. And I said, I'm not going to, like, I don't know, I'm not going to judge you for opinion. Just give me your opinion. And then we would go into the article afterwards. So I start off with like 1 or 2 touch base questions. And one of my students would actually, I kind of picked up the fact that she didn't dedicate as much as time that I would on the script. And I say that because, I dedicated at least, like, even now, 1.5 hours after a script session. And that's a lot of passion, dude. Like, it's just, and for any of the new coaches, I say, do it now. So once you have the kind of benchmark of where you want to start, it gets easier, because it's hard initially because you need to drive the rapport. You need to drive, you need to kind of let them know their level as well. And sometimes I don't see potential. I say that. I'm like, you're going to have to push yourself. If you think that you're going to be fluent next year, you're kidding. Like, you're going to have to read books. You're going to have to kind of, put yourself in that headspace where you listen to BBC News for 10 minutes. That's what I ask my students. Like, apart from the article, I say every 2 days, go to BBC News and see an interesting article and just think about the wording there. Or if you can't do that, go to Netflix, choose a program, listen to it. And then I kind of use that touch base question as a basis to the article. And one of my students, she wasn't making the biggest effort. And that was really frustrating for me. And I let her know that fact that I spend a lot of time on the script. And what I expect in the revision script session is to actually have a fluid conversation as opposed to a script session where they have to think analytically about the writer's perspective. And I don't want answers straight off, like, you know, because for instance, if it was a Harvard Business article about leadership, you know, 5 issues in, you know, leadership right now, 5 pain points in organizations, and they list it.
Right,
and I
right.
said, and they go, oh, it's that. I'm like, I say, why? Do you see it in your workplace? And then they don't know, because that's like outside of the article. It makes you think, but that's how you implement what the article's saying. Like, if you're just going to give me the answers on the article, it does not help me or them. So I would drive the questions out a little bit more. So as a coach, what you need to do, you need to actually read the article at least 2-3 times, which is 3 times. Maybe if you don't get it, if it's really dry, do it anyway, initially as a starting point. Right now, when I'm coaching my students, I don't go, oh my God, what am I going to say? Because I've picked up their capacity already. So I know which pain points they have. This particular student, she has grown so much because her role expanded to outside the Korean office. So she has to deal with kind of Western people now in the workplace, whereas it wasn't like that before. So I think she pushed herself a little bit more. So I can actually pick it up in the conversations that I have right now with her. The words that she used, majority of the time are the words that she was struggling with, oh gosh, last year this time. Because last year this time she was like, oh, I don't know. She would just pop that word in and I'll be like, where did that, like, it doesn't even connect. But now she goes, oh, if it's like boom, boom, boom. And I'm like, good. But now that she can do that, I kind of think of what else do we need to know? You need to able to take a conversation easily outside of the business context to a conversational, like colloquial context, which a lot of Korean students struggle with still. Yes. Because I stop mid-article because sometimes the articles are very dry and highbrow. So like, you know, you don't talk about leadership with your leadership at work, right? Like you don't talk about, hey, in the weekend, I read this Harvard Business Review with my coach. Nobody cares. Okay, some people might care, but like technically you don't talk about it. So I go, hey, do you think, I always ask them, do you think you'd ever read this article had I not recommended it to you as a session? They're like, nah. I'm like, why? Why do you think it's such a pain? Is it because you don't understand, or has the writer written it in a way that it's kind of like nearly a sales pitchy type content? You need to be able to read the underlying issues behind it. So that's how I drive the conversations right now. It's actually fulfilling to see students be able to grow their vocab capacity, to be honest. It's taken me like a bit of time with certain students. Other students are very driven, so they don't do that. But I think it's two-way. Like as a coach, I know you got, like, everybody probably works as well full-time. Some people might. We don't spend 24 hours a day on a script. Like, you know, let's be honest, you can't, Don. Like, you know, we've got lives to live. But what has happened to me is the fact that I've kind of got my own portfolio now, where I've got a list of students, not the students that I teach now, but the past students that I've taught. Because before we had the kind of the system on the website, you know, I had to manage in my own in the folders, and it would take a lot of time. It's clean, it's still there, but it becomes your own asset because it drives, it motivates you in terms of business as well, because you understand, because you're like reading so much on a weekly basis. So I could see that I had developed as well in terms of not my English capacity so much, because it's still there, it's the same level, but I think in terms of understanding corporations and how they manage certain issues. And there's been like trending issues recently, politically. There's been a lot of trending articles on leadership these days for some reason. And also the issue of artificial intelligence always being a hot topic. But I say AI, but given in a business context, it's about, you know, changing IT transformations. And do companies have budget? To be honest, if you're teaching a person who's not in that industry, it's very highbrow and uncomfortable to read. But I give that content out anyway, because you're never going to have a comfortable conversation with external clients. You have to be able to drive that in a very interesting manner. So I don't always go, what's the main point of the article? I don't care. You already know the main point of the article. I always go, hey, what do you think, you know, if you were actually a person not working this industry like yourself, what do you think of the article? Then they have to think outside the article kind of context of what the answers are there for. Like, because the writing in Harvard Business Reviews, typically, they give you the answers. It's straightforward. It's bullet point this, bullet point that. And a lot of consultants write these articles when they, no offense, but they don't get involved in the real crunchy like project. They're not the engineers. They drive the projects. And I kind of try to bring those conversations out. So when you actually get the students comfortable with that type of conversation, they don't worry about being wrong, vocabulary wise, grammar wise. And then it gets interesting. Then it gets interesting because you have to type so fast sometimes, because they get like, then it's not the best English, let's be honest, like, but they like boom, 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 boom. And I'm like, hang on, like, because I have to type so fast. But to get to that level, you need to be able to give a diverse range of topics to your students initially. Time-wise, I always say, make sure, like, you know how I don't know if you remember, but I think when I was taking a lot of students like last year and I had the time to do so, I would say, hey, I want to be able to do the revision session on that week after I do the script session. So if it's on Monday, I want to be able to do that Saturday. And, you know, my weekends are packed, right? Because, you know, you go out with your mates. The only reason I did that was because they have to work on the kind of revision part of it, and they remember the article a bit more. If you have students where you teach them once, or they kind of make an excuse, like, oh, I usually say yes. Like, maybe they do have a busy week. So do I. I sometimes go, hey, I can't do it this week. I've got a workshop to go to. But if you start off initially quite intense, they kind of motivate themselves or make time and prep before the revision session. And I actually get my students to create a kind of like a vocabulary glossary list, a personal list that they maintain, maybe send it to me every 2 weeks. So I just kind of see what their word list is like in terms of new words that they can use. Some students are very lazy, so I have to kind of, lazy is a hard word. Some students kind of neglect it because they just want to focus on the article. But I say do that because later on, couple years time, this will be your asset. Like, it's so annoying right now sometimes, even for myself, with any new students that I kind of drive conversations. You know, I get tired too, you know, let's be honest. Like, it's not easy, like, you know, scripting everything and thinking of intuitive questions. But once you get that structure out and you prep yourself for that, it gets so interesting. It gets so interesting because the type of conversations that students bring into the session is actually very interesting, because they actually talk about their work experience into what they see in the article. To get to that place, it won't happen in the first 2 weeks. It would be at least 6 months. So you need to actually see where you want to take your students in the next 3 months, 6 months, and a year. So I sometimes ask my students right now, like, what do you think your level will be next year? How do you think you're doing? Do you think you're doing very well? And they kind of like look at me and like, should I be saying I think I do well? I'm like, don't worry about me, but because you're the one dedicating your time. I'm trying to help you elevate that language, and I'm spending quite a lot of time here. And you kind of have to put that heart in. And to be honest, it's not easy doing that, but you have to motivate yourself a little bit. And for me, that's where it works. So.
All right.
Yeah.
Let me jump in here. I let you go off.
Yeah.
And I just want to make a note here. How passionate is Hannah? I mean, that's how it's, that's why she's so great at what she does, with her clients, and of course with her, with her main job. But that's the type of, I would say, dedication and commitment and care that you would need to put out for your clients to really stick with you. And Hannah, like, your clients have been with you. The one that you said, trying to go back to your point there, she's been with you for about nearly 2 years, hasn't she?
Yeah.
On and off, though. She took a break, but then she came back.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
and I took a break too, because I had a lot of work commitments at the time.
That's right. But I do remember this, and saying, she was like, I want to come back, but I want to come back to Hannah.
Right, really? Yeah, I took it as a big compliment, to be honest, because I to be honest, I say that as well. I love it when clients do that, not because, oh gosh, it's comfortable for me. Sometimes it's actually more comfortable to take on new students because, it's like fresh meat, like fresh content. But I think it's also about kind of people. You get to meet a lot of interesting characters through this. As a coach, it's fulfilling because they're very open and honest about their work, like their struggles. And in most often, it's most likely you never have that conversation outside of the session. And sometimes students would come to me and go, I never talk about this, even at work. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're talking about your pain points right now with your projects. And because I know where they were, they're like, don't tell anyone. I'm like, who am I going to tell? Nobody's going to care. But in terms of relationship management, it's been really fulfilling. I still talk to like some of the clients that I don't even teach right now. Sometimes if I find interesting articles, I just flick it through. What do you think? Because this is something that you like. And I think it comes from the fact that you need to like people, A. B, you need to kind of see what you want out of it as well as a coach. Like I said, it's not only them learning English to a higher degree, it's your asset as well. It's your expertise, it's your portfolio when you're allowing them to kind of propel their language skills a little bit more. Because my folders in my Google Drive right now, gosh, it's like, I've got my current projects in there, like my full-time job projects. But I look at them like, gosh, I've done so many scripts. And I look back and I was just like, just looking at my folders. It was interesting because I was like, I talked about that. There's so many interesting conversations that comes up. Mm-hmm. And it's actually kind of fulfilling in that sense. Not easy though. Rapport building does take time because Korean people, they take time to really open up. Yep. Like anyone. And I guess they would be intimidated. Anyone would be speaking in another language that they're not fluent at. So I've had some, I would say, not intimidating student, but a person who's very, very confident in their workplace. Didn't expected, because I was like, no, that's wrong, rephrase. And they'd be like, no, it's right. I'm like, it's right. Your opinion's right. The way you delivered it sounds so wrong. Like, it sounds like you're arguing with me. So you're like, just notch it down. And they're like, oh, I get it. It's not about you criticizing my work. And I'm like, no, but I do have to critically look at your work and criticize for you to grow. Mm-hmm. So if I don't criticize your work, you need to be worried. You need to start questioning, am I doing something right? What's going on? But if I go, hey, rephrase, you've used there's this one student that used this word in relation to and consequently all the time. So I was like, there are other words. If I see that consequently word one more time, stop it.
I remember though, going back to what you just said, we're not really criticizing. We're here to, help.
Exactly.
You did run into a case with a student where they were not against it, but they were so new to getting help and critiqued. So there was a little bit of a challenge there. Do you remember that case?
Yeah, probably because the person is very high up in the hierarchy of work. So they manage a team of, I think, more than 20 in that person's department. So
before you go, I just want to preface this by saying we do have a lot of, C-suites and executives that are learning from our coaches. But as you know, it is difficult to just break that, I guess, barrier of this is coach and client relationship. I'm here to help you. I may challenge you and critique you and push you, but that's all to help you. So how did you do, what was your process in breaking that ice or breaking that barrier?
It wasn't easy. It took time. I think it took at least like a good 2 months where I was like, I would revise a script and like, you use this word. they started going, oh, you think that's right? I'm like, what do you mean? Like, just don't look at it like I'm criticizing your work. I'm here to elevate you, and you need to think of it in that space. And once they understood that, they were like really open. They would talk about, projects and family and how we, and bring kind of that insight, their experience into the article. And then it became a bit more fluid. But to get to that mutual agreement and understanding, you need to be able to understand their work as well. So I'd go, hey, what's the biggest pain point right now for you in your work, as a touch base question. And you don't have to get personal. You don't have to talk about your projects. And they were like, oh, okay, I'm not comfortable. Like, if you're not comfortable, but I just want to understand. So outside of your kind of this article, where do you want to take it? And they were like, oh, okay, I'm having issue with this person because they're like this. And it's relevant to the article like that. So I would take it a little bit, angle it differently. And they would actually pick it up. My students would be like, oh, this is a touch base question. So this is
you know the lingo now.
Yeah, they're like, oh, so this is not the article, I can say. And I'm like, even in the article, you can say your opinion. So it was actually really fulfilling in the end. It was very hard. I would say it was hard for me initially because you deal with like, students who are kind of, yes, then this person was like, oh no, I want this type of article. I want to be able to know, like, I don't know, a little bit more idioms. And I'm like, if you want to know the idioms, you need to read the article. You need to tell me what you know in terms of idioms. Why is it relevant? Like, I always ask why and what and why.
Good.
Why do you want to know that? There
Good.
must be a reason, right?
It seems like, Hannah, I think what coaches can take away from this as well is there's a lot of authority in your voice, and it comes off as, I want to help you. It's like, and when clients see through that, no matter how young you are, or difference in positions or backgrounds, they will listen. You know what I mean? And your why questions, how questions, deeper questions are all in the pursuit of helping your client reach their fluency. So why I'm saying this is because I'm also teaching, a couple high-level clients right now. And they give orders. They don't take orders, right? So
yeah,
it's be very rare when they do take orders. So when they take orders,
it's difficult for them. To be honest.
Honestly, there's sometimes where I would give an instruction or something, and they would just go right by them.
Yeah.
No, it happens. But then it's like, okay, I'm not going to win every battle here. I'm not going to do it. I don't want to disturb the convo, and I don't want to take away from what they really want to say. You know what I mean? But there are times where I'll catch, and it's, I'll say something, and I kind of corrected them on a phrase or on a pronunciation, and they'll just want to just keep going. I'm like, no. So let's just stop right here. I want to kind of elaborate on this point. You know what I mean? Once you stop your breaks and you stress it, then like, oh, okay.
Yeah, that's kind of like a light bulb moment, right? I actually had a couple of moments like that, and they were like, oh, what was really fulfilling was when they kind of in the revision session would be like, oh, I would have certain words that I would want to hear, and they would like say it, and they would look at me and I'm like, yeah, I'm like, it's great. And then they would kind of use it again. But to get to that point, I think they need to understand that you're there trying to help them, not to criticize them. You criticize them in a way that you want to help them. And sometimes, let's be honest, like, you need to be able to take criticism to grow. If you're always going to be comfortable and complacent. Even for me, in my full-time work, I kind of question that as well. If I feel status quo, this is okay, you're never going to go anywhere. You're going to be where you're at. That's what it's going to be.
Well, yes. But again, let's humanize this. And we're not saying, you want to find every small, mistakes from your student. Your student's going to have a very busy day. Most likely they'll meet you in the very early morning, or after about 30 meetings at work, and now they're meeting you. The last thing you want is corrections.
Boom, 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 boom. Yeah, I get it. I get that too, because like I would have sessions like, even for the case where that initial hard student, we would be doing sessions, because I would have busy days as well. I'd be doing sessions at 6, 7. Both of us are tired. So, but we want to make an effort. So once both of us knew that there's kind of developments that we want to pursue in this article, in the conversation, I think it became much easier for both of us. But to get there, you probably as a coach need to understand what your students do in terms of kind of their reading materials. Is it this only one article that they read this week? If that's the case, you kind of have to soften them a little bit and go, hey, what do you think of this book? What do you think of these words? Can you jot it down? Can you use it once? And it's actually, like you said, they don't always have time. I don't have time sometimes to read either, but I kind of bring it up like from time to time to say, hey, this shouldn't be your only one English reading session. You will not grow. It's like me reading one Korean article and thinking that I'll be fluent next year. No way. You're going to have to kind of, if you have to listen and you don't have time to read, there's podcasts, there's interesting stuff. And I kind of see what they like. And that student that I talked to, the initial hard student, both of us had something in common. We like history, World War history. I know I look like the last person who would ever like military stuff, but I love military history. So I kind of recommended him a World War II podcast that's still on, by the way. So good, because that person has kind of a big audience, talks about the historical context, and they were like, oh my gosh, you like that? Like my student. I'm like, yeah, why do I not? And he's like, that's so interesting. Nobody likes it, but I do too. And so that conversation, I'll be able to bring that up before we start on to the article, and kind of even talk about the strategy of it. Because, the podcast was talking about war strategies at the time. It's very similar to business context at the end of the day. Similar. I wouldn't say it's war, but just, in terms of strategic movements for corporations per se. Yeah.
The last thing I want to say on that one is, I had a call with the student, and, the remark that he made was memorable. He said, she recommended me to a podcast that I didn't know it was, even out there. And she's changed my habit. Like, he listens to it, habituously. And that's because you were able to, ask the whys and care and find out really the connecting points. And that's important. I mean, if you're a coach here, you need to dig deep, right? Or else you're not going to make it very far. Isn't that right? So I think, what teachers can take away from here is, if you're not passionate, if you don't see yourself going above and beyond, then it's probably not for you. I mean,
it's not. No, I say that because you're going to be miserable.
Yeah,
coaches are going to be miserable, because you need to be willing to, I want to say give your heart and soul. That's a bit too far, but like be really passionate about driving conversation, because it is basically what it is. You're having a conversation, a business, like, above tertiary conversation on a business context with people who sometimes might have more experience than you in a particular industry. You need to reevaluate why you do it. And then if you are passionate, be able to drive those conversations where both of you learn. Coaches learn too. I don't see it as, hey, I'm just elevating the English. I've actually learned quite a lot from what they bring in terms of their daily work experience to the conversation. That's why it's fulfilling, because you understand them a little bit more. And it actually helps me in my full-time job, where I kind of, that's why this topic came up. And I would kind of bring that up with my students. I'm like, do you know, at work, and we were talking about this conversation, and they're like, yeah, because I remember with one of my students, we were talking about Tesla, the company. And I love Elon Musk as much as he's a bit of a interesting character. And we both realized we both like his leadership, but he's very kind of not the typical leader, right? So there's so many interesting Twitter tweets that he does. And I would like send my student, did you see this? Like, do you know what it means? And she'd be like, laugh out loud. Okay, I'll read it. I think it means this. And I'm like, nah, it doesn't mean that. So like, you need to be able to kind of not only kind of hold that article question, but really care about, you know, what interesting topics that they have, and what stuff in common you might have. You might not even have anything in common. That's okay too. Then we can talk about what both of you guys like in the conversation within the article. So then it's easier. Like then I would say, hey, you've made that connection. Then you're driving the passion. But that's how I would do it. I mean, every coach's ability and the way that they structure the type of conversation probably will be very different. You know, so I don't always go, oh, it has to be like this, but that's how I've done it. And that's why it's fulfilling for me.
And you've done it great, Hana. You've done it so well. And you are one of our long standing coaches. You've been with us from the very start.
I can't believe it. It's been so fast, Don. Right? I was thinking about it. I'm like, gosh, it's been that long.
What are we talking about? How long? I mean, it's been pretty long.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of since I've known you as well, because I was like, oh, I've known Don for like 6 months. And I realized, no.
Hana, well, we're going to bring this to a close.
Okay.
We went overtime, but
did we? Did you ever realize?
It's fine, because I know that the coaches are going to be, they can just feel the passion, I'm sure of it. And
I hope so.
If they can take away one thing, it's going to be, hey, look, if passion's not there for you when you're teaching your clients, then it's not going to be for you. You know, it's a marathon, and if you're just, you know, going with the actions or just kind of going day by day, don't do it.
It won't work.
It won't. Clients, it's not going to work. And
clients know. Did you know that clients know? Because I had one student, and I'm not kind of criticizing the other coach. Like, it was like last year, and this one student was like, oh, like, it's different. I'm like, all coaches are different. And she's like, no, like, I think she told me, she's like, I can tell when coaches really want to help. And I think you really want to help because you stress me out sometimes that I want to do better.
They want that though, Hana. You know what I mean? They want that from their coach. They want a coach that challenges them and stress them out for this, because why else would they do, you know,
it's a lot of dedication, right? Like, it's kind of
self-development is going to be always challenging. It has to be challenging. Self-development, the road, and having a coach that pushes them, challenges them, irritates them sometimes, it's worth it. Okay. Hana, thank you so much for your time.
No worries.
We're going to grab a bite to eat soon. We have to.
I know. Gosh, just thinking of time. I always go, let's do it in like a month, and then I always backtrack. So I'm just like, I won't even set a date yet. Yeah.
We'll do it.
Let's do it, huh? Has it stopped recording? Are we still recording?
We're still recording. Well,
okay.
I'm going to stop now, and then we'll talk about it a little bit. So thank you for everyone that's tuning in. I hope you got a lot of good things from this, and I will see all of you guys next time.
Yeah.
All right.